Ayuban. So in this lesson, we are going to have a look at Cambridge Book 10 and we're going to cover the speaking component. Now, as you know, both general and academic students can do the same speaking test, right? So therefore, either one, if you're doing general, even if you're doing academic, you can follow through this video. So, as you know, there are 3 parts for the test. Okay, part 1, part 2, and part 3. So, during part 1, there's an introduction session. And in this part of the test, it will begin with the examiner introducing him or herself and checking the candidate's identification. After that, the test continues as an interview. In the interview, the examiner asks the candidate about him or herself, his or her home, work, or studies, and other familiar topics. So if you can remember, as I told you, you will have 3 topics and 12 questions in total. So under each topic, you will get 4 questions, right? And this part will run for about 4 to 5 minutes. You don't need to worry about the time, as the examiner is the person who is controlling the time and they will worry about the time, okay? Right, so in this one, we're going to talk about weekends. Now, I'd like to look at each question individually. How do you usually spend your weekends? So, usually I spend my weekends at home because I've got classes and my kids are at home. So, I prefer to stay at home and spend time at home. Then, ඔගොල්ලෝ දෙනකොට උත්තරයක්, right? You need to tell us why. ඒ උත්තරේට හේතුවක් දෙන්න ඕනේ. Okay? You just can't go, okay, I usually spend my weekends at home. That's it. Okay? As I told you always for part 1, wherever you can give a reason, straight away give the reason so that you show the examiner I can speak at length, okay? And you just don't answer that part. Don't go out of the context, okay? Go on and on and on and on speaking. No, that's not what I mean. Just say yes or no or give the answer and maybe 1 or 2 reasons. That's enough, okay? Which is your favorite part of the weekend? I would say my favorite part of the weekend is Saturday night. Because Sunday morning, usually I don't have classes and I can just relax a bit until about 9 o'clock. So I usually like Saturday night because I can sit down, have my dinner, relax a bit and watch television. Do you think your weekends are long enough? Unfortunately, I don't think so because the weekends go very quickly and I wish there was another day or 2 added as the weekend, but unfortunately we don't have that privilege, so I'm a bit sad about it. How important do you think it is to have free time at the weekends? Personally, I think it's really important for me. Because my kids are at home and during the weekdays they go to the daycare. So they're at home during the weekends. So I really think I should have some free time to spend with them, talk to them and play with them. So I really feel having some free time is important. And if I take the other people, I think that would also be important for most people because they go to work during the week and everyone, even a machine, needs a break. So I think it would be good for everyone to kind of have some free time and relax. Now we have a part 2, right? Now, as you know, in part 2, you get a card and you can see that specific card. You will have to talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes, right? And you have about a minute to think about what you're going to say. The examiner will give you a paper and a pencil, and if you wish, you may make some notes to help you during your speaking time. Now, once it is done, right, the examiner will say, all right, remember you have 1 to 2 minutes for this. So don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please? Okay, so this is what the examiner would tell you. Now, before that, let's have a look at our card. Describe someone you know who does something well. You should say who this person is, how you know this person, what they do well, and explain why you think this person is good at doing this. Okay, so I would say teacher. Right. So I have made some notes as to what would be useful for me. Okay. I'd like to describe a person who does something well. Well, this person's name is Salome, and she is my son's class teacher. Actually, she was my son's class teacher when he was in grade 1. I know this person on a very professional level because she was my son's class teacher. Now, thinking about what she does well, actually, I have listened to her lessons because most classes were running online at that time, and she used to teach really well. The kids were really interested in learning, and the methods, the designs, the visuals, her teaching techniques, her voice, everything was so interesting, and we as parents, or myself, I could really enjoy the lesson. Now, why I think this person is good at what they do is because teaching young learners is not that easy, and especially when they're around 6 years old, it becomes very difficult. But what I felt was that she was able to make these kids very independent, sit down sharp at 8:30, then take out their books, follow through with the lesson, and then she used to give half-an-hour breaks between the subjects. And as I've seen now, my son is quite independent, so I feel it has probably happened to most of the students. And she was really caring. She never lost her temper. She was never angry. And she was able to handle them really well, even though the classes were done online. So I thought she did a really good job. Right? So this is my answer. You can come up with your own answer, right? All right. So moving on, we have part 3 questions to discuss. So we're going to talk about skills and abilities, and we will talk about salaries for skilled people. Let's have a look at each question separately. What skills and abilities do people most want to have today, and why? I think at present, most people want to have a set of skills which are quite useful and different in order for them to get a job opportunity. So they're looking at developing educational qualifications. They're looking at developing working in a team, communication skills, creativity, critically thinking ability. So they're looking at things like that, and also apart from that, writing skills. And why these skills and abilities are important is, as I told before, definitely to get a good job opportunity. Which skills should children learn at school? Are there any skills which they should learn at home? What are they? I feel skills they should learn both at home and at school. But obviously, like, the mathematical skills, the English skills, the writing skills are things that they could learn at school more. And at home, they should be learning a different set of skills like working on time, creativity, communication skills, expressing themselves. So those are some of the skills that they could learn at home. Now, why I think that they should learn skills is because when they learn these skills from a very young age, as they grow up, it becomes easier for them. which skills do you think will be important in the future? I think communication skills is going to be the most important skill in future because everyone needs to be able to communicate well and sell themselves in order to get a good job or a good opportunity. To do that, communication is the key to success, and I think that's the most important skill. Right? Apart from that, maybe people would also need creativity, right, in order for them to succeed, to find something different than the others. Now, why did I add skills, right? Why did I add creativity? Because it was talking about skills. So I felt another one would be better, okay? Let's talk about salaries for skilled people. Which kinds of jobs have the highest salaries in your country and why is this? Well, I think there are a few jobs that have or are being paid high salaries. Sportsmen, they're being paid high salaries. Actors, actresses are paid high salaries. Okay, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming. Apart from that, doctors, engineers, architects, lawyers are also earning good salaries, right? So even accountants, I would say. So why is this the case? Because I mean, it's perceived as important in our country, in Sri Lanka. And I think the level of skill that they put into it is a lot. So they're being paid more than the others. Are there any other jobs that you think should have high salaries? Why do you think that? Well, I think jobs, irrespective of what they do, are important for people. And I think most jobs should be actually upgraded in terms of their salaries, right? So communication jobs are important, marketing jobs are important, laborers are important. Even the person who takes away the dirt from the road, or the people who come to collect our garbage, I think should be paid more, because if they don't take that, then we're going to be in a big problem. So what I feel is more or less all jobs are really important, and in Sri Lanka there should be a minimum wage that people are paid. I mean, most developed countries, or I would say all, they have a minimum wage paid. So the minimum wage ensures that all the people in the country could at least survive by getting their food and their basic necessities. But here in Sri Lanka, some people are underpaid, and that leads into misery and unwanted crime. So I think they should upscale that or upgrade the pay. Some people say it would be better for society if everyone got the same salary. What do you think about that? I don't agree with it, because I feel that some people actually work more. So doctors work during the day, some of them work in the night, some of them work in the evening, some of them work in the morning. There are 24-hour shifts. So I think they should get paid more, and they're saving people's lives. And then the other jobs might not require that level of skill. So they might not be paid as the skilled workers, but I think there should be a minimum wage for them. All right. So now we're moving into test 2, right? So in the book you have 4 tests, and this is the second test. Now, if you see here again, we have part 1, part 2, and part 3. So in part 1, this part of the test begins with the examiner introducing him or herself and checking the candidate's identification. It then continues as an interview, and during the interview, the examiner would ask the student about familiar topics, right? Let's have a look at music. Okay, now I'd like to go through each question separately. What types of music do you like to listen to? I like to listen to soft music or maybe country music. Sometimes there is a music type called baila, if I'm really tired, probably listening to a baila song would be nice. At what times of the day do you like to listen to music? I mean, during the day I don't have time even if I wanted to. So I'd rather prefer listening to music during the night. Did you learn to play a musical instrument when you were a child? Yes, I did. I did learn to play the piano, and this was when I was a kid, probably from the age of about 5 to 16, I learned to play the piano. Do you think children should learn to play a musical instrument? I personally think they should. The reason is it could be quite relaxing and it helps them to express themselves. So I think it would be good if children learn to play a musical instrument. Alright, so we're moving into part 2, and as you know, in part 2, you get a card. So you need to make sure you read this carefully and you touch on all these points, okay? During the given time, which is 1 to 2 minutes of speaking time, you should be able to cover all the bullet points. You will get a minute to prepare and think about what you're going to say. Right, so during that 1 minute, you can make notes if you wish. Now, when you finish making your notes and 1 minute is up, the examiner will tell you, all right, remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now? Please, okay? So, similar, we were discussing about open air markets, right? So, a bit similar but not the same topic, obviously. Describe a shop near where you live that you sometimes use. You should say what sorts of product and service it sells, what the shop looks like, where it is located, and explain why you use this shop, okay? So, I'd like to describe a shop which is close to the place where I live, and that is a supermarket. And there are different types of products in this supermarket. You could find fruit, veggie, dairy products, bread, okay, or bakery products. There's also a pharmacy. You've got drinks, you've got fish, meat, and you've got frozen food items, you've got plastic items, household items, biscuits, what else? Water, okay, noodles, and spices. So there's a range of products in the supermarket. Now, what the shop looks like is basically it has a large area and you've got all the shelves and the aisles, and there's nothing much to describe. I mean, it's just a big area, and inside it's all really colorful, sometimes white and green sheds, and there's a big car park outside as well. This is located close to my place in Maharagama. And why I use this shop is obviously I go here on a weekly basis to get my groceries, my household items. And I like going here because they have a lot of discounts during the weekend. And they have this point system where they call it the Nexus point system. And it gives us points where we can then later redeem it. Okay, so I really use this shop when I want to get my stuff and I find it really convenient. So this is my explanation. You can talk about a shop, a place that you go to in your own area, right? Now, after this, we're looking at part 3 questions, where you're going to discuss about the local business as well as people and business, right? Let's have a look at each of the questions separately. So looking at local business, what types of local business are there in your neighborhood? Are there any restaurant shops or dentists, for an example? So I think in my area there are a few local businesses, and we've got restaurants, we've got bookshops, we've got supermarkets, we also have a medical center, we've got a bakery, and we've got some fruit and veggie stalls or other small shops available. So these are the different types of small businesses in my area or my neighborhood. Do you think local businesses are important for a neighborhood? In what way? Well, that's a good question. And I think they are actually important. The local businesses are quite, they friendly. Okay, and sometimes their things are much cheaper, and it also helps the neighborhood where people don't have to go out of their way to pick up things. So I think it's important, and in terms of developing certain areas, making sure that that specific area is self-sufficient, local businesses are important. How do large shopping malls and commercial centers affect small businesses? Why do you think that is? Well, sometimes large shopping malls and commercial centers can wipe out local businesses. The reason is people might feel that they want to go there, they want to be a part of that society, the bling, right? And they might keep on going there. So what happens is that if the local businesses don't have customers, they would die with time, and that would affect the economy in the long run. And if there are no local businesses, it's hard for the local areas to develop. So that would be a big problem in the long run. Oops. Right. Moving on, we're going to have a look at people and business. Why do some people want to start their own business? Some people like to be their own boss, and they would start up their own business. So if there's a single owner, then they can make or they can take the complete profit from that, right? So I think that's why some people would want to start their own business. Apart from that, if their creative ideas have been rejected, then they would want to start up their own business. Are there any disadvantages to running a business? Which is the most serious? Well, there are certain disadvantages. I mean, in the long run, you might not always make profit. There could be changes in terms of political, economical, social, environmental, and legal frameworks in a country, which might affect your business. And I mean, if you're doing your own business, it could be quite stressful. The stress levels of those people are high because they need to manage everything. Managing people could be really difficult as well. And what is the most serious? I think the most serious one could be that you run out of business and no longer are you making profits. Then that could be a problem. Right. What are the most important qualities that a good business person needs? Why is that? So I think a good business person needs to be creative, needs to be analytical, needs to be able to communicate well, and needs to be quick as an eagle, right? So you should be quick in making your decisions, because if you take too much of time, sometimes you might lose that competitive advantage. So those are the important qualities that I think a business person needs. Right, now we're moving into test 3. Now, as I told you, all the answers that I'm giving you, they're just for you to think through. Okay, because you're doing the speaking test, I'm guiding you to do it. Then man kochchara katha karat wadak naha if you're not going to talk, because you're doing the speaking test, right? So I'm just giving you the startup. You can think and change and build up on it using more collocations, idiomatic expressions, right? Think about some vocabulary that you could use, and then after doing a bit of research, you can then start talking. Record your answers as I tell you always. So test 3 part 1, similar structure. It's like an interview conversation. The examiner would ask you familiar topics. Let's talk a bit about travel. So let's have a look at each of the questions individually. Do you enjoy traveling? Yes, I do enjoy traveling because I used to travel a lot and I find that quite exciting. Have you done much traveling? Yes, in the past. before about 7 years, I used to travel a lot, and I enjoyed it quite a lot as well. Do you think it's better to travel alone or with other people? It depends. I've done both, but I prefer traveling with other people because then it makes you more comfortable, and especially if you're going to places that you're not familiar, going with a bunch of friends or known people would make it much easier for me. Where would you like to travel in the future? I'd like to travel to the US because I've never been there before, so I'd love to travel to the US. Right, part 2. Now, as you know, you get a card and you will have about 1 to 2 minutes to speak. When you have 1 to 2 minutes, don't stop in 1 minute. Talk close upon 2 minutes. Think about what you're going to say and you can make notes if you wish. For that, you have about a minute. When you finish, the examiner will say, all right, remember you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please? Okay? So, you have to describe a child that you know. Who this child is, how often you see him or her, how old this child is, what he or she is like, and explain what you feel about this child. Now, I'm going to give that question for you. You can do it on your own. Okay? So, think about it and maybe you can type up the answers or record it and put it in the comment section. Okay? Right, so moving on into part 3, we're going to discuss more about that topic, linking areas, right? We're going to talk about relationships between parents and children. And we're going to talk about children's free time activities. Okay? Right, let's have a look at the questions individually. How much time do children spend with their parents in your country? Do you think that is enough? Well, that depends, I think. And I mean, in Sri Lanka still, most of the parents are housewives. I mean, in the city limits, you might find a lot of women working, but in the rural areas, you find a lot of people or mothers being housewives and they look after their kids. So when you take parents, I think mother and father are both included, but usually the fathers, they spend a lot of time earning money because they are the breadwinner of the family, right? But I still feel with all that, parents in Sri Lanka spend a lot of time with their children, and that is sometimes quality time. Do you think that is enough? I mean, children don't come with a manual, so it could be really hard to understand to what extent do they need quality time. But I mean, spending time with kids is never enough. So I think that would depend. How important do you think spending time together is for the relationships between parents and children? I think spending time is really important because when you spend time, you create a bond, and that bond is life-lasting. So if you don't create that bond at a very young age, the chances are that the kids could go astray and that would lead into a lot of problems. So I'm not, stereotyping anyone, but I've done a bit of research. For an example, this research brought out that lots of children who were into drugs or, stealing, killing people, their childhood was really miserable. They didn't have their parents to look out for them. They didn't have that love, care, and affection. They didn't have the guidance for someone to tell them this was right and this was wrong. So they did whatever they thought was right for a survival. So spending time, not just time, you can't be on the phone and spending time with your children. Quality time is really important, and if parents do that, I think the chances are that we're trying to put out good citizens to the country or the world. Right. Have relationships between parents and children changed in recent years? I think so too. It has changed. The reason is the world is becoming quite commercialized and parents are going to work more and more. So the relationship that they have, it has reduced with time. And the children also are the millennials, the millennial students or the children, they're quite different. They're into tech and, they're quite advanced and they find physical or communication to be a barrier. They tend to keep themselves isolated in their rooms with the laptops or with the phones, and even when there's no quality time. I see even when they come to the dining table, everyone's on their phone or tabs or laptops or, earpods in their ears, which can be quite frustrating. Okay, so that bond, that relationship has reduced throughout the years because of the busy lifestyles, I feel. Let's talk about children's free time activities. So, what are the most popular free time activities with children today? So, I think the most popular activities would be going out to watch a movie, maybe going out to a carnival, or maybe going out for a meal. Sometimes just sitting and reading with them, playing with them could be some of the popular free time activities. Do you think the free time activities children do are good for their health? Sometimes, sitting down and playing computer games or, going out with friends, watching a movie might not be that healthy. But some kids or some children love going out cycling, they go for yoga, they go for kickboxing. So if there's something, physical involved, then I think that is healthy. How do you think children's activities will change in the future? Will this be a positive change? That's quite debatable. What I personally feel is that the children's activities in the future will be more towards sitting in one place, going through their tab computers or iPads. And I don't think this is a positive change, because the trend is that people are becoming more and more obese around the world, and even the children, the ratio has increased throughout the years. So if this continues, we will end up with a sick population around the world, which is not that good. So I feel it would be a negative change. Lastly, coming to test 4. Now, as you know, test 4 I always give you to answer because it's the last one and you also should get some practice. So looking at part 1, we're going to talk about school. Did you go to the secondary or high school near where you lived? Well, basically wasn't that far for me. I went to a school which was about 5 to 6 kilometers away from my place. So I wouldn't say it was really close though. What did you like about your secondary or high school? What I liked about my school was obviously I had good friends and we had a lot of resources to do our education. So I really liked my school. Tell me anything you didn't like at your school. I didn't like the buildings because they were not modern. They weren't renovated for a long time, so we didn't really have fans or aircon, and they were really hot. The buildings, when we were in the classes, they were really hot, so I didn't like that about it. How do you think your school could be improved? I think they could come up with more modern buildings and more facilities, which the school has provided after we left school. I went there about 2 years ago. And I saw that they had got some new buildings, a new playground, modern facilities, which seems to be quite good. All right, so this is for you, okay? Describe something you don't have now, but you would really want to own in the future. What this thing is, how long you have wanted it, where you first saw it, and explain why you would like to own it, okay? Anything, okay? It could be a car, it could be a house, it could be a phone. For me, I would like to have a Range Rover. Okay, so you could talk about something that's a vehicle, a brand. So you could talk about something that you really want. You don't have it now, but you would really want it in the future. Okay, so as you know, you have to speak 1 to 2 minutes. You get 1 minute to prepare, and you can make notes if you wish. So, moving on into part 3, you would be discussing about owning things as well as possessions. Possessions කියන්නේ තමන්ට අයිති දේවල්, belongings, right? So, I'm going to read the questions for you. You can do the answers on your own. What types of things do young people in your country most want to own today? So it could be jewelry, vehicles, mobile phones, right? Assets. Why do some people feel they need to own things? Again, this could depend. I'm not answering, I'm just giving you some guidelines. It could be because they want to feel a part of the society, they want to show how much they own, right? Do you think that owning lots of things makes people happy? I don't think so, okay? Happiness could be something that you develop on your own as well, okay? So things could make you happy, but you could have all the beautiful things in the world. Sometimes still some people are not happy, okay? Talking about possessions, do you think television and films can make people want to get new possessions? Yes, I think. People want to be in that trend. They feel, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. Definitely, yes. Are there any benefits to society of people wanting to get new possessions? Yeah, it could be positive, there could be negative, so you can talk about it. And the last question, do you think people will consider having lots of possessions is a sign of success in the future? Looking at the trend in Sri Lanka, definitely yes. But I think outside Sri Lanka, that's not the case. I mean, foreigners, apart from where, I was in the UK, they don't want big houses, they don't want big cars. All of them have quite the similar looking house. There are a few houses, obviously, the sportsmen or the actors and the actresses would have big houses. But apart from that, I think everyone is quite normal. And I don't see this, disparity as I see it here in Sri Lanka. So, examples, some 5-star hotels that I know, I've had a personal experience where they said, oh, you can't park it because mine was in Alto. But I was like, but do they pay anything different for a double room than I would, depending on the car that they drive? No. So, this mentality is quite there in Sri Lanka, which I think would continue in the future as well, okay? So these are just my ideas. You don't have to completely agree with what I say, okay? Because speaking tests are for you to bring out your own views. So we've had a look at 4 tests today, right? With different questions for part 1, part 2, and part 3. And I've done most of it, and I also gave you the chance when it came to test 4 to answer from part 2 onwards. So with that, I think we have come to the end of looking at all the speaking tests in Cambridge Book 10.